our next speaker is John Kearney. I did refer to him at the beginning, but he hadn't arrived at that point. So I refer to you as the new CEO, but are you allowed to keep calling yourself the new CEO? Another couple of years. So John's the new CEO of the National Council of Special Education. As I said, a lot of you may have had contact with the NCSE through CNOs and work in your local areas. So the NCSE doesn't have a direct input into the summer programme in terms of in the way the department has. But I think it's really important that, a bit like Frank, that you see the face of the NCSE again, and sometimes these are the only opportunities we get for that. But also I think it's important to see the National Council of Special Education's input and maybe future potential input, John, around these areas, because it's just really important that the system sees the whole child. And that it doesn't get, as you very much experience as parents, sometimes your child gets siloed up into different areas. So I think we felt as the National Parents Council was really important to bring in education, the agencies that are involved to speak today, so that they can give their perspective on the summer programme. So as we've now about 30 seconds with no alarm, John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, shortly. I'm delighted to be joining you here this morning, and sincere thanks to Anya as a member of our National Council for Special Education, but also the tremendous work that you're doing up and down the length of the country in terms of communicating and engaging with parents. I'm delighted to be joined with my department colleague, Frank. Frank, I know many years through further education and training, and it's good to see our paths crossing in more recent times in terms of special education, and of course to see the international perspective as well shared to us within the Irish context. It's very important for us that we're continually learning and looking at international best practice and then applying it here in just jurisdiction. And of course, first and foremost, and of course, is always about continually listening to parents and ultimately children in terms of enhancing provision. When Arnie was mentioning it to me about the summer programme, I was thinking maybe it's Saturday morning now. I could be doing better things maybe than coming up here to Dublin. And then I realised very quickly, Arnie Lynch is not a woman that you say no to. So I said, I better get up to Dublin very quickly. I did clarify, as Arnie has done, that we've a limited involvement in the summer programme. We're very much appreciative and welcome all recent announcements in it. And so my brief from Arnie was maybe a broader perspective to share with you. And I'd probably retract some of my experiences in terms of inclusion programmes. First and foremost, I would have been a school principal in a secondary school. And one of the most positive benefits of a programme I saw there was the school completion programme. And that was a programme that was principal of a large school in County Cavan, 600 pupils school, very close links with our catchment area, but there were challenges and difficulties. And when you saw those was when students were returning after the summer months, they in terms of the cohesion, consistency that they had for attending school on a daily basis, that was lost, as Frida's experienced there in a different setting. The continuity of children within an education setting. And the school completion programme did deliver. It delivered in the sense of the personalised programmes were very much tailored to the needs of children. And then there was literacy and numeracy supports to ensure that the children were still maintaining contact and progressing as we wanted them within the secondary school provision. I also, when I was principal, always trying to think outside the box. We would have been very conscious of children that were dropping out of school and that they weren't actually getting employment opportunities. So we looked at cross-border funding and we put in place a RAPID programme, which was another layer of tailored vocational training within the secondary school environment. And again, that was assisting. And again, it's the programme that was running 15, 16 years, and it's giving tremendous progression opportunities for young children in getting sustainable employment within the local catchment area. I moved on from principalship, and then was very fortunate, privileged to be Chief Executive of Cavan Monaghan Education and Training Board. And that brought me with a broader perspective then in terms of schools and schools that didn't have school completion programmes, but nevertheless still had the difficulties in terms of dropout rates, in terms of retentions, and the needs that were needed to be developed to be put in place in that. And again, just creative thinking in terms of the bounce back initiatives, which was after school supports. The schools are the centre of our communities, and it was with a view to put in place then homework provision, placement opportunities, guidance and counselling for the children and for the families to ensure that link, the progression with schooling environments. Within the need to be, we had the added dimension then in terms of youth work prevention, and we were looking at within a region like Cavan Monaghan, you will have different challenges, and we had rural areas like West Cavan, and there was transport issues. But again, we sought creatively around that and duly bought a bus with a view to ensuring that young children were brought into a centralised location in Cavan to ensure that they were very much connected with the vibrancy of the town itself. We were always looking within the ETB then in terms of if you're looking for improvements, for enhancements, you must measure it. It has to be data driven. So we're always looking in terms of progression routes. We were fortunate in Cavan Monaghan in having 2 large PLC centres, and we were looking at how best to improve the progression routes for children in schools through the LCA programmes to PLC centres. We also had 6 youth reach centres then through both counties, and looking at how could we enhance the progression routes for those children. We were looking at the failure rates in our apprenticeship programmes, and then we had adult literacy supports, and we combined those with a view to ensuring that the number of apprentices failing their first and second year programmes of the apprenticeship programme, and that declined dramatically once we had joined up thinking in that regard. We also, and again I have to acknowledge Frank for this in terms of an extensive further education and training budget, and that allowed us to be creative and allowed us to put in place supports for autism children after particularly young adults, and we established the Cavan Autism Centre with a view to offering again more tailored support for young adults with autism, but again linking them up with local employment opportunities. As Arnie has alluded to, I was very privileged to be appointed Chief Executive Officer of the NCSE about 7 months ago, and of course we have a very significant workload at the moment in terms of delivery and rollout of special classes, increasing special schools provision throughout the country. And I suppose that's just the first tier of the journey we're on in terms of enhancing inclusion activities in this country, because ultimately it's about looking at the enhancement of the teacher and learning engagement within our schools, looking at the ancillary supports like the summer programme in terms of wraparound supports to the placements within the various special education settings, and then taking a wider, broader perspective in terms of what we want for our young children. That the school is the first layer of that. They are, of course, the obligations that the United Nations Convention on Rights People with Disabilities, and we will have to be looking progressively toward a very inclusive society for that, and what that will actually challenge us. I'm always look forward to morning. All jokes aside, I love mornings like these. I love mornings engaging with you, parents, and hearing your stories and hearing what we have to do to learn and take stock. I also love going around seeing exemplars of best practice around the country, and again looking at a broader, wider perspectives. 2 certainly captured my mind. I'm from Cork originally, so I have to particularly mention 2 Cork centres. The Rainbows Club in Cork City itself, on the north side of the city, is supporting over 1,000 pupils with autism. One of the first things that struck me immediately walking into that centre was a sense of security it gave parents. There's a simple thing like a canteen, but I remember sitting down with parents, as Frida has explained to us, hadn't slept for weeks, but they were there, they were supporting, and there was empathy and support in the room. But there was much more than that as well. There was parental support programs in the sense that parents were being supported, there was shared understanding of the problems, but there was also targeted intervention programs that could make life somewhat that little bit easier. There was then integration in terms of curricular initiatives, but also there was seamless integration of therapy supports, and you saw this was a community-based hub supporting real needs identified within the Cork City region. At the other side of the city, heading towards West Cork as such, there was a field of dreams, and it ultimately was a field of dreams. It was a training centre being delivered for young adults with Down syndrome, and a remarkable centre in the sense that with Cork ETB as such, there was progression routes put in place for these young adults. 55 students were being supported within the centre, but there was remarkable success with that. There was 8 students actually graduating this year, but each and every one of those 8 students had actually got gainful employment. One of the most remarkable centres I've seen in terms of looking for what we want ultimately in terms of that inclusive society. In terms of sharing with you, both from my practical experience from my previous employment history before joining the NCSE and now taking a broader perspective in terms of where we're going. And again, with previous speakers, very much welcome the recent announcement in terms of the summer programme. But I'll share with you in terms of what I think are the key drivers in terms of expanding the summer programme. It stops and starts ultimately about identifying the need, but centrally to that are again our mornings like this morning, where we're listening, and active listening was mentioned in terms of we're listening to the needs, the sources of distress for families. Myself and Frank need to hear that in the sense that we have a true perspective in terms of what the extent of the challenge actually is. And then that's, of course, as we get closer and closer to the children themselves, of trying to see it from their perspective, their position and their viewpoint within the world. Again, it has been very much mentioned by Michael, continuous communication and engagement, and we're ultimately trying to do that at all times and ensure that we progress, whatever progress is met and made, that we're communicating that effectively with each other. Of course, it's always about removing the barriers, and there's many barriers, as we've heard this morning, but it is looking at creative ways of trying to remove that. And they are complex solutions, they're complex challenges. We have to find creative and innovation solutions to work our way around that. It also has to be strategic and coordinated, and you see from Frank's presentation that's the direction the department is heading with the continued rollout and the enhancement of the summer programme itself. The individual programmes themselves in each of the centres then have to be structured and planned. Quality control will have to underpin each and every one of these programmes that are actually been delivered. The role of the inspectorate is key and central to that. And again, from all the various programmes I've been involved in, the most successful ones are data driven. You have to be looking at what you're trying to deliver, and you have to be again enhancing the use of data with a view to improving of that. We can't get away then from governance and value for money. There's a significant investment by the Exchequer in terms of delivery and rollout of these programmes. Governance and good oversight has to go and continuously dovetail within that. As Michael has alluded to, there has to be a continuous focus on systematically improving whatever programme or initiative you have, that you're continuously setting out to enhance, deliver and improve your outcomes. And of course, centrally to that, of course, will be staff CPD, the needs and the challenges of the programme, the enhancing of the learner experience. That will need very targeted CPD. And I suppose the final observation, it does take stakeholder engagement. It also takes the education department of health working together with a view to enhancing the outcomes that we all want for, particularly with the specialised focus of the summer programme itself. So I'm delighted to be here with you. I wish you well with the deliberations of the afternoon, and I thank Anya for giving me the opportunity of sharing my reflections with you. Thank you.